Hey, what's up, guys? It's Rico here, CEO of Sourcefind Asia, co-host of Main China Podcast, and of course, I'm joined by Alan Scanlan, who is my business partner in Hong Kong. This is a part two to the episode that we did previously about the project that we've been working on since it was like October with
Yep.
Event Fuel. That's Fuel. What's the website?
Eventfuel.ie.
Eventfuel.ie,
Yep.
and is Eventfuel in conjunction with PayPal. And we just wanted to close off what we discussed in the first project, what we discussed in the first episode about the first project, and then talk about what we're doing next. So without further ado, cue the intro music. So, in the previous episode, Alan, I think I was in Portugal. I feel like that would have been early December last year. And we were at a stage where we had started to ship out most of the goods, or most of the goods had arrived in various countries. I think it was, how many countries? Like over 100 countries or something like that?
Yeah. I mean, just all over Southeast Asia, and then all over Europe and the States.
Yeah.
Because we had sent the kind of bulk shipment into the US, so it was East and West Coast and all over Middle America as well. I don't know exactly how many countries in Europe, but then we obviously had quite a bit in Southeast Asia.
Southeast Asia. Yeah. So it was a lot of different, probably one of the most diverse shipping processes I've done. But I've shipped to a lot of different countries, but that was the most in one go. Maybe some of the crowdfunding campaigns, but then the crowdfunding campaigns would be a situation where we would ship it to a distribution center and that we were kind of hands off from there. But like this was a situation where our actual freight forwarder was involved with shipping to every place, and sometimes even direct to consumer. So it was an interesting situation. I mean, for the most part, pretty smooth when you think about when they contacted us and what the deadline was and all that stuff. So if you haven't listened to the first episode, guys, check it out. It's on YouTube. There's a video and there's also a podcast as well. If you want to hear the audio version, so you can hear the story about how the whole, how we even got this business in the first place. But that being said, what happened since that time period was that we've finally started to close out the project 100%. Like we had shipped out, I would say 95% of the goods, but we had in the Philippines specifically, and luckily I am in the Philippines, because if this was another country, I don't even know what we would have done. But like in the Philippines specifically, we had issues with taxes. So even though our quotes that we paid that we got from the freight forwarder was including taxes, both international, like import taxes and export from China, Philippines is a different animal. They take additional fees, and they were just taking random. We had about 2,000 packages coming into the Philippines, and I would say, I don't know the exact number, but it was about $10. Oh, so I guess it would be 500 packages that were taken aside randomly for additional taxes, because we had to pay an additional $5,000, roughly $5,000 in fees. That was fine. It was smooth up until after Christmas. I think after Christmas, like we'd already, out of the 500 packages, let's say, we had already shipped like 400. And then after Christmas, it was like an additional 100 left. We didn't know the exact numbers because they weren't giving us the exact numbers, and it was just dragging and dragging and dragging. Where we were trying to contact the same people that we've been dealing with in customs and everything, and they weren't replying. We're calling them. I asked one of my employees here in the Philippines who wasn't even like her job is sales, or her job was sales because she's not working for us anymore. But um, I asked her to help and call because I got this feeling when I was calling FedEx here. First of all, I wanted to go there. They were like, "Oh, it's COVID, Omicron, you can't come." Blah blah blah. I was like, "Okay, fine." But then at the same time, the person that I was speaking to, the customer service person that I was speaking to, I just felt that they didn't fully understand what I was saying.
Mm.
Like as much as English is the first language and they teach them in school here, Tagalog is still like very dominant. Maybe a lot of people don't, if they don't interact or if they're not as educated, they might not understand your accent in English. So I just felt that. So I was like, okay, I need one of my Filipino or Filipina employees to talk, and she said she called. I'm not sure if she actually called because she said that when she called, nobody was picking up the phone. But then when I called, people picked up the phone. So it was like a little bit strange.
Yeah.
Then I started asking one of my friends. This dragged on for like a month. So we're talking about end of December, early January. So at that time, I was like, oh, it's holidays. That's why, it's slow, whatever. It's holidays, holidays. We go into the end of January and I'm like, this is taking way too long. And then of course we had Chinese New Year. So that also kind of put things on pause for a bit. But towards the end of Chinese New Year, which was like mid-February, I just started thinking to myself, I was like, I think I need to have somebody else help me with this, not the other employee. So I started talking to one of my friends who I've known for 4 years, and I know she's super responsible and everything, and she's helped me with a lot of different things. Her name is Jamie, and so I asked her to start like calling, and she was getting through. So like, okay, the other employee was not getting through, and
Yeah.
then Jamie on the first day that she starts calling, she's getting through. So it's like clearly, something was off there with the first employee. And then yeah, Jamie's more of like she's a firecracker, like she just fucking gets things done, and she just started calling them like 2 3 times a day, sending them multiple emails, some lightly veiled threats here through email, like you
Reading
know
what you're
uh,
doing.
yeah. So then she started getting responses. She started getting information that we were not receiving for 2 months. It was still slow because then we go into March, and then in March we start to like it was almost like a mystery. It was like where are the goods? Like how many goods are left? Like what are there any additional taxes to be paid? We were owed They owed us money. There was a credit that we had with them as well. So it was like, can we apply that credit to the additional taxes? Like it was all these little small details that they were not answering before. So we started to unravel all that stuff, and then in the end, cut to now, we only have like one package left that will be shipped to the one of the addresses, and then we have probably, I think it's at like 30 packages or
30,
something like that,
33.
33 packages that will be shipped back to Hong Kong and
Yeah.
eventually
But I
China.
mean, the big problem is what's going on in the freight world right now, and what's going on just collectively with everything in the kind of supply chain.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've read a few times, and it's happening across the board in all different industries. A lot of companies are letting go of customer service people,
Mm.
so customer service levels have declined massively, and a lot of companies are just ignoring certain issues, or if like it's like because our issue is relatively small in terms of a FedEx and a DHL and what they're dealing with in a day to day at the
Yeah.
moment with what's going on in general. So you're either not getting through to people, they're ignoring it, it's way down on the priority list. Like you said, the language and the understanding issue, which we're really used to with dealing with China, right? Like the Chinese, yes, where you're talking to someone and they say they understand you and they don't have a clue what you're talking about because they don't want to lose face. So you've got to go back and you've got to be really clear and make sure people understand. And you have
Mm-hmm.
that issue with, like, I certainly have that issue all the time with accents. like people not understanding what I'm saying, and as my wife says, I mumble a lot, so I have that issue, and so it's across the board, the language thing, but then just what's going on in the world at the moment with freight and supply chain is just these companies are on their knees and they just have so many issues. So like hence why it took so long. And even now with these 33 boxes, we're having them sent to Hong Kong and we need to get them to Shanghai, and fuel the customer is like, oh, like when can they go to Shanghai? And Shanghai's in lockdown, and we have no knowledge of when that lockdown is going to end. And again, it's such a small, like it's 33 boxes, right? So it's again, it's obviously important because it's our customer and they need to get it done. But when you can't give people answers, and we've been dealing it for the last 2 years, like people asking when you can get stuff produced, how long it's going to take to ship, how long the mass production is going to take, and we just don't have clear sight of these things anymore. It's just not as straightforward as it used to be.
As it used to be, but that's the biggest issue. Just to touch on one of the points that you made, this is why it's also important to have boots on the ground, right? Like we've been talking about this with China for like years and years and years, ever since I started working in China and when Mike was there. And it's the same thing in a place like Philippines or some of the other developing countries where there's manufacturing going on. When you do have problems, like there was such a clear difference between when we were just trying to talk to, and I'm in the Philippines physically, but like I'm not Filipino and I don't fully understand the business language and stuff like that yet. Still learning that side of things, but like it's a big difference between like emailing and trying to call people versus like having somebody who's a local who speaks the language, who understands the culture, physically going to a location and talking to people. And like we struggled from December to March, and then basically Jamie has gotten this shit done in like the space of 3 weeks to a month. You know what I mean?
Listen, like being able to do stuff face to face in general across the board with business just makes it all, it's a lot easier, but it can make it a lot more urgent, because if you're talking to someone and explaining to them rather than over an email or even over a call, it's just, I think it's just more inclined as humans to kind of get that shit done.
Yeah. And okay, so and then of course going back to the lockdown, it's like from a mass production standpoint, things are generally consistent. I think the biggest issue is the shipping. Shipping is like, that's because in this situation, like literally right now we have a not connected to fuel, but I know even with fuel there's that situation. But like we have another project that the production's been done for 3 weeks. We can't send a QC team in there, and we can't get the goods out of there.
The port in Shanghai is one of the biggest in the world, right?
So it's just like those kind of things are the part that is the most difficult when it comes to COVID and the unpredictability of everything. It's like even your production's done, but you can't inspect the goods, you can't ship out the goods until things are.
I was talking to my brother yesterday, and with the family business, and they've nearly finished production on all of the Christmas stuff for this year. So normally they'd order the Christmas stuff in May, try get it all done by May, and the production is nearly finished, because they're like, because the business is going quite well, they've just over ordered everything, because at the moment product is king. Like you're seeing it all over the place, and I from experience with Ireland and dealing with the family stuff, there's so many companies who can't get product in. And then all these lockdowns and delays are just, when you eventually get that money together and you can buy something, you need to give yourself an extra 2, 3, 4 months to get it all in. Like freight's taking double the time to get across to Europe in a lot of cases. And then trying to get on the production line, trying to get your customers to give you the orders early, all that sort of stuff. It's just made everything a lot more complicated.
And this is where, I mean, not to beat a dead horse, but this is where it's important, like when you're working with companies, like if you're in North America right now, like to go to China, to go to some countries in Southeast Asia, it's quite, well, any if you're outside of Asia, to go to some of these countries, it's quite difficult to do it yourself.
You can't go to China.
You can't go to China, of course. unless you had like a residency permit or these kind of things. And the quarantine is going to be ridiculous as well. You know, um,
I
it's
mean,
just a lot
no
of
one's doing it for business. No one's going to
yeah,
travel that way and spend 2 weeks in quarantine.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
And so it's really important to be able to rely on other people and rely on other companies to get some of this stuff done. And then of course just adding that buffer. That's why I mean with me and you, I've been, me and you have been trying to push fuel, just be like, hey, be prepared that
yeah,
you saw what happened with the Christmas thing. Of course we delivered 99% of the
yeah,
goods on time, but there was that 1% in the Philippines that like got delayed for 3 months. Like these are the kind of things that we cannot predict.
yeah.
You
You
know.
just can't know, right? But like it's
Yep.
good as well. Now we've got like Jamie in place and a plan in place, so we don't have this happen again, because
Yeah.
it looks like PayPal are going to be hiring a lot of people in the Philippines, and we're doing the starter packs now for PayPal as well. So there's going to be a lot of goods going there. So at least we have that experience. But I mean, as you said, like 99% of the project, we nailed it, especially in that time frame. To
Oh
do it
man, it was
was
ridiculous. Yeah.
mad.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's going to really stand to us moving forward with them on that project. But again, like just kind of back to it, like having the team in China, the Source Foundation team in China, is just, it's absolutely key.
Yep.
Like we wouldn't have been
Mhm.
able to do that project without them, being outside of mainland, trying to deal with like all of the sourcing and stuff, possibly, but like the packing of the goods and then dealing with all the freight. I mean, it's the biggest project I've worked on in terms of, well, probably not the biggest in terms of quantity of product, but in terms of the variety of
The
product.
variety and scales and
Yeah, like the
different
different type.
countries and
Yeah, exactly. And
yeah.
like sending stuff in bulk to the States, packing the stuff for Europe and sending it in bulk, and then sending it individually around China and Southeast Asia. Like it was there was a lot of spinning plates going on
Mm.
it, at each time.
This is kind of a side note, but like I'm so happy I was in Portugal at that time because it was extremely stressful, actually,
Yeah, yeah,
just because of the deadlines involved with it. Like I was actually genuinely, like, my girlfriend knows because she was with me at the time, and we're in the island, and I was in the perfect place to be in that situation because I was staying in when the project started. I was staying in like this house, um, which I guess I can, Lord, just post like a picture of the house. There's an Airbnb I was staying in, which was in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of like the forest. So it was super quiet and super chilled.
mm,
So what I would do is I'd pretty much just wake up at like 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, take my dog for a walk for like an hour and a half, and it was just beautiful, serene nature. Just hearing animal sounds and
yeah,
things like
yeah, yeah,
this. And then I would come back and make myself breakfast, make my girlfriend breakfast, and then I would just start working on the PayPal stuff. But the PayPal stuff was so like intense that I think me being in that environment kind of just leveled it out a little bit.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then of course maybe like in the afternoon we go to the beach and things like that, or sometimes we'd have like a little picnic at the beach at night or something. So it was just like it was a good balance. I think it was perfect for that particular high pressure situation for me.
yeah,
But yeah, that's random side note. Um, but yeah, I think that is, I mean, of course, the whole point of this podcast is really just to let people know that these things are possible and how you're supposed to handle them. Um, but yeah, I think that we did a good job, not to pat ourselves on the back too much, but I'm interested to see how the starter packs are gonna go,
yeah,
how the next stuff that we're doing with fuel is gonna
yeah.
go.
I mean, we kind of we've spoken about it before, and after we got things going, I remember calling you one day and just thinking like, there has to be something here with this project, this online events giftware kind of concept, and was like, let's put together a PDF presentation, let's try and like send it out to different people. And my concern was, we're a sourcing operation and not we don't have a marketing team, we don't have all these bits and pieces. And I was a bit like, if you cold call these people, are they going to take you seriously? Are they going to listen to you? And we're not necessarily adding loads of value there. So I thought, okay, well, maybe there's some option to work with Fuel. Got on to Brian there, the owner, and he was like, we've actually already started this process. And their plan was to build out a website, basically blueprint the PayPal concept, and then go out and approach companies all over the world with kind of between 15 and 20,000 plus employees. So I've been working on that with them in terms of how we can build in, and us kind of acting as Fuel's sourcing office in Hong Kong and China. They've just sent out, I think, 30,000 emails. And there's like a small hit rate, like whatever, I think it's like 2 or 3% you tend to get leads with, but they're actually also doing, I don't know if I told you this, Brian only told me yesterday, I think they're going on a sales mission to San Francisco this week or next week. So they've sent out all these emails, and kind of the top management crew from the company are going to fly out. They're setting up a US office for the event side space for online and in-person events. But when they came back and said, no, we're looking at doing this straight away, I was like, that's what you need. Like, we don't have the capability to go to San Francisco and start knocking on doors, right? Because again, you would listen to us. But if you've got that team and that marketing kind of part of your operation behind you, it just helps you get the foot in the door a lot easier. And I think they've got 80 odd employees in the business now. But they're kind of pushing on big growth into the UK and into the US market. And they've just bought a wellness and fitness festival in Ireland and the UK. So I think they bought 50% of that. So there's like a lot of opportunity to put products into that in terms of yoga mats and yoga balls and all that sort of stuff. So I think, again, like, it comes back to partnering with the right people and having that kind of team in place. And we concentrate on what we're good at, and let them concentrate on that.
Well, I mean, I don't know if we discussed this before in the podcast, but like, I mean, it's kind of like with me and you, right? Like, the first time you contacted me, I remember it was about the whiskey whiskey boxes.
Yeah, whiskey boxes, yeah.
I just remember when we had like a discussion, like we had a call and everything, and we talked about like how the partnership could work. For me, I was thinking, well, as long as you are talking to the clients, as long as I don't have to handle the communication with the clients, like, I'm good. Like, we can do all the stuff with the sourcing and everything, manufacturing. That's our bread and butter. But like, customer service side of things, with the cultural differences, that's where we've had issues in the past. And not that my employees are rude or anything like that. It's just like sometimes they don't explain things the way people would understand. It's like,
especially with the Chinese Western thing. Like, I mean, all too well, like, you could be talking to someone and you think they're being rude, but they're just not. It's just
they're just talking the way they.
If you're not raised to be told, like, whatever it is, like, and to do what manners, like saying thank you and goodbye and holding doors, whatever it is, like, you're not being rude. It's just your culture. And
as much as I could train my staff, I've trained my staff to communicate in certain ways and things like that. And I've noticed my employees have picked up a lot of the sort of niceties in language, but it's just still not the same. It's just not the same. Like,
no, it isn't.
I've seen it. I've seen customers get like irritated or whatever. Like, and it's like, it's just because of the language barrier. It's a cultural barrier.
Well, 100%. Like, I'm always at it. Like, I'm always kind of like trying to, like, just messing whoever, what factory I'm communicating on WeChat and asking how they are and if they had a good weekend, and just trying to have a bit of fun with them. And they don't get it. Like, they don't. They just, like, he's asking me if I had a good weekend.
Someone's like, why are you asking me about my weekend?
It's not computing. And, like, I always mess with Imogen and call her boss.
Yeah.
And, like, you can see, like, I remember the first few times I did it, it's just like see you, mate. Bye. Thanks. Again, it's just that kind of like, is he really calling me the boss, or is he like, what's going on? It's quite funny.
Yeah, like with Imogen, so her like actual Chinese pronunciation of her name is Jen Jen.
Okay.
So I didn't know about that until like maybe I guess a few months in. And so like obviously everybody's calling her Imogen in the office and everything. And then when I found out Jen Jen, like we're having like a team meeting, and then I just started saying Jen Jen, and she was like, she looked at me like, what? And then like everybody else was laughing, but like she was like, oh, why are you calling me Jen Jen? I was like, that's your first name, right? How did you know? I was like, it's in the contract. Like you wrote it. I just translated it so I could see the pinyin version. But yeah, so it's just like, yeah, little things like that. This is culturally, like, I mean, you know, for other people it'd just be like it's a funny joke or whatever, but like
Yeah.
for her, and she was kind of like discombobulated.
Yeah. Yeah.
um but yeah, so that's one of the things. So like with our partnership, that was really key for me. It was like, oh, Alan's gonna handle, you know, 80% of the communication with the clients. It's fantastic. Like that allows us to just focus on what we do best,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. And I think like again, it's working to strengths, right? It's like bringing in new clients. I think we both agree is the hard part of this.
Yeah.
Kind of getting out to people what you do, and like a lot of mine is kind of word of mouth. Like I haven't
Hmm.
done much marketing. Like I think your podcast is probably one of your best avenues, which is how I came across you. And it's very, I know we've touched on this in the past. It's very so the sourcing world seems to be a very old man's game.
Hmm.
And like I haven't met too many other people. Not that I'm very young, but I haven't met too many people your age in the
Oh, yeah,
game.
yeah. Here you go.
Oh yeah, getting there. So it's again like not like I mean I don't know if anyone else is doing a sourcing podcast or like how to manufacture.
They have definitely come up. I think we were the first. I
Yeah,
think I would say that we were the first. Manufacturing wise, Michael Michelini's podcast was talking about business in China in general. So he did touch on
yeah.
sourcing and stuff like that. But
Is
in
he
terms
is
of
he
a
still in China?
specific, yeah, he's in China because he went back at the beginning of. I actually literally have like his suitcase in my
Oh really?
in my apartment. Um, that's it. I'll okay. I'll just tell the random side note. So, uh, the if anybody's watched this episode, I did a podcast with Michael Michelini when I first arrived in the Philippines in 2020, and he was about to go on vacation with his employees from the Philippines because he's got like a call center here. And you know, he went to Cebu with the employees, and actually part of the podcast we were talking about is like he was asking me whether he should go to China or no because quarantine and all this stuff. And at that time, COVID was pretty much only in China, as far as we knew. I think we had only had one case in the Philippines. So
2020.
I told him, which is bad advice, and I'm happy he didn't listen to me. I told him, I was like, yeah, just stay here, man. Why would you go to China? Like, I'll just stay in the Philippines. So he was like, all right, no, I'll think about it. I'll think about it. So then he went on vacation to Cebu. Did not even get to leave the hotel because we literally went in. Cebu went into lockdown as he arrived. So while he was on the plane, they went into lockdown. So his staff came back to Manila, and then he's now like thinking to himself, like, okay, I can't go back to Manila because at the end of the day, again, this lockdown is about to happen in Manila in like in a few days. Uh, and then he just booked a flight to China and went to his wife and kids. So he just left from Cebu directly. I think he flew maybe into the airport in Manila and then went to China, and
Yeah.
he's been there since. But it was the right move because at the end of the day, it's like if he didn't go then, he wouldn't have been able to go to China for like, I don't know, 6 to 8 months. Like it would
Well,
have
especially
been,
with his family there, right?
yeah, with his kids and his wife. And he hadn't seen his kids and his wife in a few months already at that stage because he had
Okay.
been working. So it was like, yeah, it was the right move. Yeah, he didn't take my advice, and that was good. In that situation, okay,
Yeah.
in that situation. But most of the time, you should take my advice. uh, but yeah, what were we talking about before the Michelin? Oh, podcast
Yeah. 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 Just
and
the
marketing.
sourcing. That's actually that's the next one. We need to get Brian on and Adele on from Fuel to kind of round off this project as well, which I think would be good having them on.
Yeah.
And kind of might open the net a bit wider as well with them putting it out to their network. But like, and I think like even just it's kind of again back to having boots on the ground with Imogen and the team there. Like it's so difficult unless you're going down the Alibaba route, which has a lot of pros, but also has a lot of cons. And if you're new to sourcing, um, it's just very difficult. So like having people on the ground or having a team or having kind of like agents to go through at the moment when you can't get into China, I think is a big advantage.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's just like it's resources, right? Like you tap into people that have more experience than you and have more resources than you to get things done.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a good way to work. I mean, we talked about this before. It's like if you're starting a company or you're running a company, it's working on your business versus working in your business type
Mm.
of thing, where it's like, okay, you hire professionals to do what they do best, and then you can focus on other stuff to grow your company. And for a lot of people, I think it's difficult. It was difficult for me as well. Like when we first started, because I was doing everything when we first started. I was doing the sourcing, I was doing the Alibaba communication, or everything, QC inspections, like everything that we do in the company. And it's like over time, I had to start to let go of those things and hire people to do those things and trust them to do their work
Yeah.
efficiently. And I mean, obviously, yeah, it's a very difficult thing to do because you always feel, not always, but a lot of times you feel like I could have done this better, you know. But at the same time, it's like ultimately the business grew from me
Yeah.
letting go of control.
Yeah. You've got to have that trust in people and not
Yeah,
micromanage. Like I
yeah,
often find that I'm like, oh, I'll chase up again on WeChat, and then it's just like, no, just like if someone was doing it to me, it would piss me off. So
Hmm.
don't do that as well. And yeah, it's the only way you kind of grow is partnering and bringing in teams. Is definitely the way to do it.
So in general, I guess this is like a more of an abstract uh, question. Where do you see all this stuff going with fuel and PayPal? Because I mean, we
Um,
got we got a lot of things that potentially could happen, right? They sent the email out to those companies. We see what they're doing with Wallfest.
yeah,
Is it
I
PayPal stuff
mean,
like this?
I think there's plenty of growth. I think the PayPal we're going to have another PayPal project for Christmas, um, which again we'll get it a lot sooner, which would be good. I mean, Fuel have been running events for people who don't know. Ireland is a big hub for all the big tech companies in from the US. So Google, Facebook, Airbnb, all of them. All their European headquarters are all based in Dublin for tax reasons. And Fuel have been doing live events for Google and Facebook and whoever else is kind of kicking around there for the last 5 or 6 or 7 years, but pre-COVID. So they've got their feet in the door with that.
Can you just expand on the tax reasons though, just real quick, not to
Oh,
interrupt you?
it's like tech companies only have to pay, I think it's 13%.
Mm-hmm.
It was a law the Irish government passed in the 80s, maybe early 90s, to try attract companies into
Very smart.
Ireland. Very smart. They did it with the big pharmacy companies
Mm-hmm.
in the sort of 60s and 70s. So all big pharma businesses have their headquarters in Ireland as well. So they just did it again. And I know Trump at one stage was trying to get them to all go back, but he wanted like Facebook and Google to move to Middle America, and they're all like,
Yeah.
don't think so. Um, so yeah, I think there's lots of opportunity there. For like they had told me they'd already started conversations with Google about it, which would be really cool working on a project with them.
Of course,
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I
no,
know we were talking about this in the first episode. I was like, I never thought that would be working with a company like PayPal. Like, it's not
yeah, yeah,
even
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
something
mean,
that I even, you know, it's not something that was on my radar.
I think PayPal have 400 million customers worldwide.
Yeah, I'm one of them.
Yeah. So yeah, but like I think Google would be a step up from that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I like there'll be some other opportunity there with guys they've already worked with, and then see how this email goes. I mean, I've never been involved in a project that's emailed 30,000 people. Now it's cold calling emails, so the hit rate's going to be very low. But then following up with this trip to San Fran, and they've got the team in place to try and get those conversations off the ground. So like I would think they'll land 2 or 3 other people that will be doing similar projects to the PayPal project. And just like I've seen it over the years, like when you have that one big name in your pocket that you've worked with and you've done something for, and you can show people that, it makes a big difference. So I think there's plenty of growth there. The WOW store that we're working on for PayPal, so it's like the in-house store that PayPal have, or that they're developing. So there's going to be lots of opportunity. Essentially, be setting up fuel, or setting up distribution and fulfillment in the States and in Ireland. And then we'll be handling distribution in Asia through a 3PL here in Hong Kong, sourcing all the product, shipping it to the 3 locations, and essentially running the Asia version. I mean, like an e-com business. But PayPal want to bring down their carbon footprint. They've previously been shipping too much stuff all around the world. So I think there'll be lots of opportunity there, where we're in the sort of early stages of getting that all worked out. And I've been working with one of the team at Fuel, and we've done all our part. So just waiting for PayPal. There's a lot of security issues just with all the data and all the information. So hopefully that will be kind of kicking off around Q2, Q3. So we're in Q2, so in Q3 this year. So yeah, I think there's definitely lots.
Crazy they're already in Q2, and I'm 30 years old now.
Yeah.